Public speaking. Ooh, just the words can make people feel terrified. But you don't have to. In this short video, I'll give you quick tips on how you can feel more confident, whether you have a large speech or an internal presentation coming up, things that you can do to prepare and feel more confident in the moment. The first is your topic. Make sure that what you're talking about is authentic to you. If it's a large presentation, it should be something that you resonate with, because as you talk, you'll feel more comfortable, more confident, and the audience will make that connection with you. Oftentimes, if you're giving a large presentation, you have some carte blanche or room to choose what you'll be talking about. When I've given public speeches, one of the things I've talked about is putting the human back in human resources. If you've seen my videos, you can see that's something that I'm passionate about. If it's an internal presentation, make sure it's within your subject matter area, that it's something that you know about or can learn about. If it's not, talk to your manager or leader to make sure that this is the right opportunity for you. Because if you're giving an internal presentation and going to be talking to people, you want to make sure that you feel as confident as possible. So if you're giving a large speech, you probably have some room to talk about the topic and think about what's unique to you. If it's a more corporate internal presentation, it may be more assigned, but make sure that whatever it is, it's something that's within your knowledge and that you can learn about and research to make sure that you can cover it and answer questions. What kind of questions? Talk about that next. The questions you may get from your audience, whether it's a large speech or whether it's an internal presentation, often should start with the question that you're asking yourself, which is, what do I want people to take away from this conversation? If you're giving a large speech, it may be some sort of inspiration. But make sure you have some practical steps that people can take so that when they think back to it, it's not just about how great your presentation style was, but also some of the things that they can do to blend into their life and tell their friends. For an internal presentation, thinking about what's the point. Is it to influence a decision? Is it to get people enthused about a project that's coming up? Is it to help educate people on something that's within your area that they probably don't know that much about and probably don't need to know that much about, but need you to tell them exactly what's to know? Think about broad scale, overall your audience, what you want them to take away and what they need to take away from your presentation, and start from there. Part is thinking about your audience. When I present to large groups of HR individuals, people in HR often like to hear and talk to other people. So oftentimes humor or HR type topics can come into play because we're all on the same playing field. If I were presenting to a group of accountants or tax professionals, that's a profession I don't know much about, I probably would think to refine my style a little bit and talk to some of the individuals that run that event to say, what's the type of style that tends to resonate with this group, ensuring that you're making sure you're meeting the audience where you are. If you are in an internal presentation at your work, you may be talking to different leaders, and you may have a sense of what they're like from seeing them at different presentations. This can be an area that gets people really nervous because they think, I've seen this person at a presentation, now I'm going to be talking to them. But so this is why talking to your manager, your leader, to ask, as I think about what people should take away from this meeting, I want to anticipate some of the questions and map out some of the questions you think people may ask. If you have finance in the room, likely they're going to be asking finance-related questions. What's the bottom line? Or supply chain. When people sit in a meeting, often they're thinking, okay, what does this have to do with me? So if it's a really internal type presentation, really thinking about the types of individuals that are in that room. And if there are individuals that it doesn't have that much to do with them, you should highlight and say, this is really specifically going to hit on our finance and operations teams. It'll only tangentially hit on some of the other teams. That way, you may give permission to some of the other people to tune out. And that's important to know because they may do that and they'll likely appreciate you calling attention to those that especially need to pay attention to your topic. In public speaking, it can be helpful to remember that people generally want to see you succeed. If you're speaking in front of a large group, people are looking forward to hearing what you're going to say. They're generally not sitting and waiting to think, oh, is this person going to forget everything or mess up? They want to learn from you and hear from your experience. They look to you as an expert. Now that can feel super intimidating. People may think, what do I have to teach them? But whatever it is, whether you've lived a unique life, whether you're saying a message that most people are afraid to get on a stage and say, what you're bringing to them is something that they're going to often be listening to every word. And so telling yourself, I'm here, I've earned this spot, and people are looking for me to do well and want me to do well can be helpful. If you have an internal presentation, then you may be thinking in your mind, oh, there's this one leader that's always so difficult to present to. So again, thinking about the questions that they may think, thinking about the questions they may ask, and being prepared for those. So any type of question they may have, that you're able to give that response, but not thinking yourself to death. It's okay if you're giving a presentation internally and someone asks a question and say, you know what, I thought about a lot of things, but let me get back to you on that. Because you don't have to know everything in the moment. And even the most critical of leaders generally is going to respect someone that will take time and go back and get that answer, rather than making something up on a fly. Again, people generally want to see you succeed. As you're preparing any type of materials, if you're giving a large presentation, often you're going to have some sort of deck. Or if you're giving an internal talk, having data on a slide. But remember, people are there because they want to hear you and they want to be looking at you, not just reading from your materials. So if you have slides, ensuring that they are short, have very few words, so that people can understand what you're talking about at that time, but not just sitting there and reading off the screen. If people wanted to do that, you could have just sent them an email. But if you're giving an internal presentation, whether it's helpful to have a deck and some handouts, asking your leader what would be most helpful for everyone, but ensuring that in those internal presentations, you remember that this may be what you live and breathe every day. But everybody else may not care about your topic as much. They may rely on you to handle that out of sight, out of mind. So when you have that time, especially if you're talking to more senior leaders, remembering to keep it short. Thinking of the true highlights that they need to know and backing into those. You can always go into more detail if they have questions. You can always offer to give more detail. But you can say, I want to keep it short and get to the point and tell you the most critical information. If you have questions, I'm happy to get into those, but I want to be mindful of your time as well. Things like that can send messages to leaders that you understand all the different topics that are going to be coming their way, the decisions that they have to make. And they're likely going to be looking to you to give a recommendation of what to do next. Now that you have your topic, you have any slides that you're going to prepare, you want to practice for what you're actually going to say. If you're giving a large presentation, it's really important to know the logistics. What's the room going to look like? How many attendees? What type of equipment? Are you going to have a microphone that's like Britney Spears on the side? Are you going to be holding one? Will you have a clicker to advance the slides? Talking to the coordinators of that conference or event and getting a sense of all of those logistics is a great idea. They may not even have any of the answers at the time, but they'll likely be able to get back to you in advance of that day. Because you can always say, I just want to make sure that I understand the logistics and I'm prepared for whatever the scene is going to look like. If you're giving an internal presentation, then asking about some of those logistics as well. What room are we going to be in? Stopping by it. Or is this by video? Is there going to be chat? Anything I should be mindful of when I'm presenting and take questions from Q&A? Making sure you know some of those logistics. Oftentimes there may be an admin support that's helping to lead those that you can ask those questions too. So as you practice, again, if you have a large presentation you're giving, you can give it often to an empty room, but practicing holding in your hand if you have a microphone that way, or using your hands, but talking slowly, confidently, making sure you're not rushing through if you're nervous, especially on that day when you may have adrenaline. Internally, if you're giving a presentation, who can you practice with? Ideally, you can practice with your own boss, especially if it's one of the first times you've given a presentation or talked on this topic. But your boss may not have time to sit and give a 30-minute session and feedback. It's unfortunate, but it's true. But in that instance, you can always talk to your boss and ask those questions. Who should I be thinking of? What type of questions might they have? And have colleagues that you can practice with, or a roommate. Again, even practicing in an open room. But just practicing through it, but not doing it 10, 20 times, because that can get into your own head. Making sure you feel confident and comfortable, and remembering that people want to see you succeed as you're going to be talking. When it's the day of the presentation, what can you do? You might be nervous, so it's important the night before to do what you can to get a good night's sleep, whether it's taking melatonin if you take that, have a relaxing tea, but doing things to try to calm your mind. And in that morning, again, reminding yourself of having a mantra. People want to see me succeed. Doing visualization. Even these things you may have never done before and feel totally uncomfortable doing, closing your eyes and visualizing yourself, whether it's in front of a large presentation, whether it's internal meeting on video conference, whatever that looks like, visualizing yourself doing well and connecting with the rest of the audience. Making sure logistically that you're ready. But when you're ready to go, making sure that you're talking confidently, not getting sped up as we talked about. And keep your unique self. It can be helpful to connect with different people. If there's a large audience, you'll likely see a couple people in particular who will give you a smile and a nod. So as you look around the room, having those people as an anchor to look back to and give a smile. That type of positivity can be incredibly helpful, especially if you feel nervous. It often gets easier as you begin that presentation. If you're giving an internal type talk, If your boss is in that room, ideally, looking to them for that type of connection, they can often be a reassurance, but making sure that whatever your audience, you're looking around and glancing if that's possible. And paying attention to those visual cues. Looking at timing. Hopefully you have a sense of what that timing is going to look like. So if you need to, on the fly, cut something out of your presentation, being okay with that and practicing that even so that you don't get as flustered if that happens. But knowing that when you're in the moment, being positive in communicating that information. If something messes up, if you mispronounce a word, I do it all the time when I'm recording videos, but moving through it and laughing and having a sense of humor in that can help to remind people that you're human. Because again, as they're looking to you, they're often thinking, I could never get on stage and do what that person's doing. So by having that public speaking presentation, whether that's in a large group or an internal meeting, there's a lot of people that are looking to you as a person that they admire and want to be like. So good luck in your presentation. In one final word, if you try to think to yourself of, oh, what's a presentation I saw that was really bad? It's hard to think of one, but you may be able to think of ones that were really good, that were really memorable. Those are the things that tend to stick out to people. So remember that. As people think back to your presentation, they are going to be rooting you on.